And I'll just quickly explain a little bit about this initiative in just 2 minutes, those who have joined for first time today. Okay, so I hope you can see on the screen, this is an initiative called as Saturdays for Sustainability Learning, where we have a goal to discuss sustainability issues in a systematic manner for holistic understanding. Because something missing about sustainability discussion is holistic understanding, and that's what we want to cater through this initiative. So I hope this initiative would be a mastermind group of sustainability professionals and who come together and try to understand sustainability concept with the help of each other. So peer-to-peer mentoring is there, helping each other to solve the problems and taking input and advice from other experts as well. So this is a concept of synergy where 1 plus 1 is not does not equal to 2. There are infinite possibilities of synergistic collaborations and outcomes. So with the synergistic collaborations, you can expect 4 outcomes: learning something new every week, and in our busy schedule we can't get time for it. So this is a perfect 1 hour where we can devote for learning. Second is networking with fellow professionals, experts. Third is exploring different opportunities. And fourth is about becoming a thought leader into sustainability domain. So how do we do it? I'll not explain entire thing, but one thing is for sure. We believe that best way to learn is a discussion, asking question, and second is understanding the wisdom and knowledge about the concept. So that is something is very important, and that's why we connect every Saturday 7 p.m. It's a virtual call. And how you get it? So there are 2 ways. Once you fill this registration form, you will get the link on your calendar. Okay, so from there you can join. Or second, we have a WhatsApp group where we only put the link to the session. So we don't put any spam or any other content into the group. So you can join the WhatsApp group as well. So this is a way how we connect. And thank you so much everyone for joining today. And I'm very happy to share our expert speaker, guest speaker today, Muralidharan sir, who is very senior into social sustainability. And I must say that he is one of the first person, uh, one of the few people from India who were doing the sustainability social audits right from, I guess, 1990s. So that's great. And he's alumni of Indian Institute of Science, ISC Bangalore, 1982 pass out. And he has a distinguished career as an auditor, as a capacity building professional into sustainability. So it's pleasure to learn from you, sir. So as we have a today's topic, exploring social part of sustainability reporting. It's related to business, human rights, labor rights. So thank you so much, sir, first of all. And yeah, you can share the presentation. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dhananjay. Are you able to see?
Yes. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, good evening to all of you. It's pleasure to be discussing on the social sustainability aspects. And I had the opportunity of getting connected with Dhananjay way back. And I've been telling I'll give a presentation or a talk, but unfortunately couldn't. And it has materialized today. So I'm happy about it. And we will today talk about the social sustainability, separate topic from the usual jargon. What is being used today is ESG, which is a common term you see. Earlier it was triple bottom E approach: economics, environment, and ethics. And within the ethics domain came the social sustainability aspect. But now we have this ESG as environment, social, and governance. So we will take the social component of it and discuss the significance of that, the relevance, the importance in today's context, and how challenging it becomes when you get into the reporting part of it, or even addressing issues. Because we are in the social part, what we need to understand is that we are not dealing with some inanimate objects like environment or maybe looking at the air quality, etc. We are dealing with people, and people at all levels in an organization, maybe the president of the organization, the middle management, and of course the workers. And today's context, we see varieties of the types of workers. It could be contract worker, seasonal worker, migrant worker, casual worker. So we can go on, be distinguishing them. And in general, we deal with the people, their rights and how the rights require to be protected, to see to it that the organization's social sustainability is in place. Now, when we look at the sustainability, talking about it, we understand the significance of it, nothing to be detailed, as we have been talking every week about on this topic, different facets of the sustainability. It just refers to doing business without negatively impacting environment. So the environmental component comes in, community or the society. So this takes into consideration both the S and the G component, meaning the social sustainability part of it and the governance required to see to it that both these aspects can be taken into consideration in an effective manner. So the idea behind why people should talk about sustainability, what is the significance of that? It's clear that we do well by doing good. So in other words, we are trying to see to it that the negative impacts are reduced or mitigated, should there be any, or bring in a positive impact or a change. For example, an organization establishes a factory in the rural area, and it's something good which is being done, and it gives employment to the local community, the indigenous people who are there, or those people who can get a right to earn a good living. But by giving employment, if they start exploiting the labor, of course, it is not doing good. They may be doing well financially, but they are really not doing good for the society at large. So this is something which requires to be understood when we talk about the social sustainability part of it. So gone are the days when we used to say, what is the purpose of business? Why should the business exist? An organization exist? It is not just to produce product and make profits. So this was the idea which was there earlier, maybe 100 years ago. If we see many of even the economists have from US or Nobel Prize winners, they used to say that what is the purpose of a business? It is just to make profits and satisfy the shareholders. So nothing but the graph has to go up and up, and also to see to it that the shareholder value increases. However, over a period, the greed which was there to make money or increase the profits resulted in negative impacts to the community, to the environment. Maybe, for example, there have been umpteen number of instances of, for example, an organization which is into manufacture of soft drink. It is just extracting water from the land. The groundwater depletion has been noted. So this obviously becomes, should we call it as a responsible organization? No. So similarly, exploitation which happens in the mining area, some of the things where people are asked to do some dangerous jobs. One of the examples I can give you in today's context is ship recycling. If you see that, ship recycling industry, many of you may not have heard about it because I was working there for a number of years. And if you see that, it is considered as one of the dangerous occupations today because it has chemicals, chemical hazards, it has physical hazards, biological hazards, and the nature of activity itself is too dangerous. So when we look at it, and it is labor intensive in today's context, if you see. And interestingly, for your information, India is one of the leading ship recycling countries in the whole world. And most of you would have heard about Alang, where in Gujarat, near Bhavnagar, where these activities happen. And it's one of the finest places for ship recycling. But when such a sort of a situation is there and exploitation of labor and all other sort of abuses, labor abuse happens, it is not a responsible way of doing business. So over a period, what has happened is that the responsibility got attached to the business part of it. In other words, everywhere you will see responsible business in any type of industry, maybe responsible disposal of hazardous waste, a responsible way of production. So everywhere, totally, when we see that, the addition, I would say an objective, rather an adjective, which has been added, that the business requires to be responsible to the environment and the society. Of course, it has now gone above that. Now we look at the business to be more accountable for its actions. So it has gone beyond the responsibility and it is required to take accountability for the good and bad which happens because of its actions. So to be responsible and satisfy the requirements is the expectation of stakeholders. So what has happened? The focus yesterday was more on the shareholders, like who are having shares in the organization and who participate financially and contribute to the well-being of the organization. It has totally moved from the shareholder focus to the stakeholder focus. Now, stakeholder focus also, when we look at it, it could be the government, it could be the suppliers, it could be the neighboring community, and it could be the workers, contractors, customers who are being served by the organization. So a stakeholder concept has come into focus now. And today, it is slowly getting expanded to not only the living beings who are there, but also the environment. And maybe the organisms and trees and forests and everything is considered as a stakeholder. So the definition of stakeholder is getting widened. So ultimately, when we look at it, that's why it's getting redefined when we see the challenges coming in. So what has happened to the business per se is that responsible business today is not an option, but it is mandated by the society. In other words, any stakeholder, you and I, we are also stakeholders to various organizations, and we also expect the organizations who serve us to be responsible, be it a company which manufactures food items, or if it is something which is giving us maybe a laptop or electronic industry, or it gives power. So everywhere the responsibility has been taken into consideration in its operations and business. So when we look at the ESG part of it, sustainability, when we look at it, it is a three pillars of sustainability, what we call as the environment, social, and the governance. We now discuss about the significance of S. And it is a very wide subject, and everything will have to be discussed for an hour if we see that. If we look at the stakeholder engagement, that process itself has to be structured and it has to be discussed, or it can be discussed for hours together. If we look at the community engagement, that is again a separate topic altogether. Labor rights, when we look at it, of course, it can be spoken for 5 days, and that's what I do in these auditor courses for social accountability. So we will quickly look at things, a bird's eye view of the social accountability or the social sustainability part of it, and then we can discuss, you can ask questions, and then we will try to discuss things, and it will be good for both of us, right? So when we look at the discussion on the social sustainability, human rights has taken the center stage for responsible business. In other words, treating people with dignity, and the dignity of labor is taken into consideration, and respect what they have to be given while doing the work. So human rights has taken a center stage now, and it is gaining significance over the period. And when we look at the human rights as a topic, everything, including the environmental management, will get rather absorbed into the social sustainability. So what I wanted to tell is that the division or the demarcation, like what we talk about environment, social, and governance, though they are distinct, the borders which are there, they are slowly getting shifted here and there. A social issue, an environmental issue can become a social issue. A social issue can become a governance issue because of business ethics and other things which come in. So the boundary is very wafer thin. And so it becomes important for us not to look at in a compartmentalized manner the social sustainability part of it, but look at it broadly in a holistic way to see to it that we as an organization or the business, we are in a position to address all these issues and challenges as a whole. So when we talk of human rights, again, it's a ocean. It's a big subject which requires a lot of discussions, but we focus our attention to the human rights at what place, because that is how we are trying to build sustainability within the organization. So when we talk of human rights, there are three important things which have to be understood. One is the human rights is universal, meaning whatever the rights which we from India, we enjoy, it is equally applicable to somebody in an African country or a European country or USA. The same rights, what is there. If we have the right to earn, they also have a right to earn. If we have a right for a safe working environment, a person working in a European company has the same right. So when we look at it, the universality has to be understood. And this is where some challenges come in because of cultural issues, because of local requirements and the legal requirements which are there. So issues crop up now and then. But what has to be understood is human rights is it's something which is universal. Second is that this human rights, when we look at it, it has to be provided to an individual. And these are all the rights which we enjoy because we are human beings. We were born as human beings, so automatically we get these rights, and these rights will have to be provided to us. Otherwise, we are not human beings at all. So this is to be understood. So these rights will have to be provided in a wholesome manner, meaning it is that I have given you a job. So you are getting employment, right to work. When we talk as a right for an individual, yes, I have got the right to work. I have been given a job. But if I am not paid and if I am exploited, forced to work, that means I am not getting the economic right which I will have to enjoy by way of doing work. So what becomes important? For example, within the organization, I have been given employment, fine. But if I would like to form a union, so which is my civil right or a political right, if I may put it, if it has to be given, and if the company curbs the formation of union, then I am being denied that right to form association. So what I meant to say through this is we cannot give some rights and take away some rights from the individuals. It has to be given in a wholesome manner. Third, it is inalienable. In other words, when the rights have been given, suddenly we withdraw those rights and we give it later or do something else or tamper with it, that is not acceptable. So these are the three fundamental things which will have to be understood. And this is what is the focus which we get while discussing the subject of business and human rights, or in other words, the social sustainability topic in organizations. Now, for ease of understanding, these rights which are there, they are divided into 5 rights: civil, political, economic, social, and cultural. So civil, we say that what is there in the society, those rights which have to be given to an individual because he lives in a society. Political rights, we know the voting rights which one gets. Economic rights, the right to work and right to earn a living. And social rights, some of the things because of the societal requirements which will have to be met. And of course, the cultural rights, the celebration of festivals or marriages or whatever it is. These are all cultural rights. Just for example, I am just giving. So what I meant to say is all these rights will have to be enjoyed to see to it that there is the human rights protection when we see that for the social sustainability part of it, right? So how do we address this? When we look at this, it cannot be something in an abstract way. It cannot be to the whims and fancies of respective governments or respective organizations. So in order to enforce these human rights, there are some human rights instruments which came up, and these are all those instruments which you see. Instruments meaning the documented form of the detailing of the human rights and what actions must be taken by the state, by the government, or by the organization to demonstrate that the human rights are protected in the organization. One of the first documents which came in to which detailed the human rights is what we call as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this was the first document which came out on December 10th, 1948, and the first of its kind, and it detailed with a preamble and 30 articles. Articles meaning 30 paragraphs, which detailed out the entire spectrum or the gamut of the human rights and how government or any organization must take into consideration these factors to demonstrate that the human rights are getting addressed, protected, improved in the organization. And being a declaration, as you see that it was not an enforceable law. In other words, that it was that everybody had to follow these requirements, were expected to follow these requirements. But if there were violations, nobody could be punished. So then came what we call as the international covenants. Covenants are nothing but regulations, which talked about the economic, social, and political rights, then the civil and cultural rights, like that. Certain covenants came in, are what we call as the ICCPR, ICESCR. These are all those covenants. I don't want to come up with too much of jargons, but to make you understand how the evolution of these rights came in. So the covenants came in where there was some sort of an enforcement which could be done by the world on a state, on a country, if they do not follow these requirements. Now, both these UDHR and these international covenants, they got added together, and then there came the International Bill of Rights. So though UDHR was a declaration earlier, which came in 1948, if you read it today, it is still considered to be relevant. All those articles or the detailing which is being done is still relevant. So it retains its position and it gets added to the international covenants. It became International Bill of Rights. And subsequently in 1919, when we see that after the First World War, came the International Labour Organization, and it was a separate division, or what we call as an organ of United Nations. And they came up with what we call as the ILO conventions and recommendations, specifically focusing on the workers, the labor. So, and India, interestingly, was one of the founding members of ILO. And these conventions or the regulations got accepted by the countries all over the world, and through the process of ratification, what we call as the acceptance of this regulation by the process of ratification, which assisted the respective governments to come up with the local laws. So what we see as a local law in Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, or anywhere else, their origin comes from the international law. So there cannot be any sort of a change or anything between, or not meeting those international law and just meeting domestic regulations. It cannot be different. So then came some of the thematic conventions like the UN Rights of Child, and also the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. These are all the thematic. Some theme got addressed in these conventions, the regulations. And we have the UNGP, the latest one, this United Nations, the guiding principles, which have been released with a framework of protect, respect, remedy. Protecting, that is the job of the state, that is the government. Respect, those requirements will have to be respected by the organizations, and there will have to be a remedial measure should there be violations. So this was formed by, or this framework got itself identified, or it was created by John Ruggie, and it is still called as the UNGP. And we have the OECD, Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development. So those guidelines are also there which address these things. So within this addressing of the human rights comes the labor rights. And the labor rights are both the legal rights and human rights. So legal rights enforced by the law, and even otherwise, these are all those rights which are to be enjoyed by the workers or anybody, employees of the organization, relating to labor relations between workers and employees. So these rights are codified by the national and international laws, and some of these international laws are the ones which we discussed a little while ago. The objective was to give adequate protection of workers. So whenever there is a labor abuse, exploitation, or any sort of a situation, what happens is that the rights are violated or they don't get protected. And that is where we find the system to go into a state of an unsustainable situation, right? So within those rights, there are something of what we call the fundamental rights. The fundamental rights means that anyone who is an employee automatically, if he or she is designated as an employee or a worker, automatically gets these rights because of the designation itself. So some of these rights are the abolition of child labor, and we see that this is a problem everywhere in many types of industries, the forced and compulsory labor elimination, and health and safety, safe working environment. As you would have seen in today's paper in the morning, there was a big accident in Sinnar, Nasik. If you see that, there was this thing, but fortunately,
Yes.
no, there was no casualty or anything. But yesterday again, there was a issue in Baroda where 2 people died. So safe working environment has become a, if you see, fundamental right to do work in any industry or organization. Freedom of association and collective bargaining is another right where the workers or the employees, they have the right to either form, join, or associate into an association, what in common terms we call it as a trade union. So we have Trade Union Act 1926 and those requirements which will have to be taken care of by the organization as a recognized union, how to, and the idea behind the formation of trade or the association or the trade union, the intention basically is to come up with one voice, and workers join together and come up in one voice to address those issues which impact them and to find a solution. And basically, it came initially for collective bargaining, focusing on the wages. But over a period, it has widened these rights, the components have widened, so it looks at welfare and various other measures. But what happens is that many of the organizations feel scared about a union. So if workers want to form a union, they again get worried, and it may give rise to strike, it may give rise to lockdown and various other things. So union is an allergic term, if you see in today's context, but the intent is not for that. It is only to have a proper social dialogue to see to it that the issues of workers or the employees can be addressed effectively by the organization. And finally, the thing is about discrimination, which we see and which we hear also about the caste discrimination or religion or various ways. It could be a migrant labor getting discriminated. So for various reasons. So there are various grounds of discrimination. There are various forms of discrimination. And like if an Indian goes and works in maybe Europe, and if they don't look at it and understand our culture, then it becomes a big discrimination issue there, as we read in the media and newspapers about these issues. So these are all those fundamental things, and other the labor rights have also got itself added. Now coming to the how do we report these things is that when we look at the social sustainability part of it, maybe from 80s, go back and look at it. Earlier forms of addressing this was through the codes of conduct. So every brand, every company had its own code of conduct, like Walmart has its own code of conduct, IKEA, like various other companies, the brands, they came up with the what we call the supplier code of conduct, and only when the supplier is able to demonstrate meeting those requirements, then the orders got placed. Now then, this was considered as a way for risk mitigation earlier in 80s. But over a period, in today's context, if we see, there are pluses and minuses about the audit part of it. Sometimes it becomes a harassment. Sometimes it becomes a challenging issue for the companies. Certain requirements to implement becomes a challenge. So there are the both the positives and negatives as we see in any of these schemes. Then came subsequently, every sector looked at it and addressed their issues of the social sustainability in their own codes. Now we have, for example, in textile industry, we have RAP, Worldwide Responsible Accredited Production. So this is just a code, a framework where any textile or a garment industry has to follow, which helps in demonstrating that the labor rights have been taken care of, or the human rights protection mechanism or a system is there in the organization. Similarly, Amphori is an organization like we have in Europe, what we call as the BSCI, Business Social Compliance Initiative, again devoted to garments and other, sometimes on fruits and vegetables like that. We have RBA, Responsible Business Alliance, which mostly talks about the mineral industry and the electronics industry, if we see that. SEDEX, which is again an organization in UK, which addresses the garments and maybe some footwear and other types of industries. GOTS, that is Global Organic Textile Standard, which is in the cotton industry. It recently took into consideration the social component also as a part of the standard, and every organization who apply for these certifications will have to abide by the social standard requirements also. Like that, aquaculture stewardship, like that, every industry now has, even if you see the cocoa industry has a code, or if you see the marine industry has a fishing industry has a code like that. So they are coming up with their own ways and means of addressing this. In addition to that, there is also a generic standard, like a unique standard like SA 8000, Social Accountability 8000. So I work for Social Accountability International now, and we have our standard as SA 8000, similar to our ISO 9000 or 14000 standard, management system standard. And this is the only standard where an organization can get itself certified. So when all these things are there with the pluses and minuses, so recent developments have been in the area of the supplier due diligence standard, like Germany has come up with a due diligence standard. In other words, it is something enforceable and it can be taken to the court of law should there be violation. So the stringency of these codes and also to see to it that they are being taken care of. This is all what we see. Now, when we look at the voluntary initiatives, we see in the Indian context, the business responsibility sustainability reporting initiative, which has come up from IICA, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, global reporting initiative, which has been there from past 20 years for a voluntary way of reporting the sustainability, which has an inbuilt the social component there. We have the international financial reporting standard, which has recently come up with integrated reporting. Then there are European regulations. These are all the latest things which are happening with the corporate sustainability reporting directive. And we have the corporate sustainability due diligence directive. That is the 3D, due diligence directive, which has been published, and every organization will have to take care of course, taking into consideration the eligibility part of it. So the frameworks require a management system-oriented approach with which we are familiar too, about the PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, or we have to see to it that the system is there to ensure that the sustainability of the processes are taken care of. And this is done through what we call as the materiality assessment. So this is maybe a jargon which people use. What is material to the organization? So in other words, we take those vital few from trivial many through a structured process, what we call as the materiality assessment. So there are methods how to do that, and it is for the organization to take into consideration which are all those social issues which will have to be addressed by them effectively and which get prioritized through the process. Now, how does the reporting comes in when we see that? Like GRI has various indicators. In the case of BRSR, they have given key performance indicators. So these indicators will have to be fulfilled or met. Those requirements will have to be met, and they get published in the form of a sustainability report. So that is one way of showing that those issues of relevance and significance have been taken care of by the organization in demonstrating social sustainability. Of course, all these audits, we are familiar to, as I say, 8000 or RBA, they have audit or verification reports which are shared with the client. They are not generally made public, but that is also a way of demonstrating it. Similarly, the GOD standard has it. And the present movement is that to see to it that integrate all these sustainability reports to the SDG, the Sustainability Development Goals. So if we go through these 17 goals of this thing, maybe 5, 6, if you see that, will address the social sustainability part of the initiatives taken by the company. And as I discussed earlier, social supply chain due diligence is gaining attention. And what we look at is more on the continual improvement of this, and also the social sustainability part of it, and also the community engagement, which is becoming more relevant. So what is the way forward? If you look at it, integrate social sustainability or embed those requirements, sustainability, into the business strategy itself. And we have to look at it as a risk-based approach, and to see to it that those, whatever the existing policies which may be there, maybe a engagement policy, employee recruitment policy, or health and safety, or maybe welfare, disciplinary policy, whatever is there, we'll have to look at it, revisit them, and see to it that these meet those emerging human rights requirements in workplace, and also to see to it that it is just not on paper, but we are in a position to see the effective implementation, monitoring, and review mechanism which is to be there. So should there be any sort of a glitch or a non-conformance or deviations, there is also a redressal mechanism or grievance handling mechanism which will have to be there as a part of the review process. So what is required is that this is the challenge which is there, and changes in regulations are happening, and changes in the aspirations and also the expectations of the stakeholders are changing. So what is required is that we have to upgrade meaning that we have to upgrade the workforce to meet those new emerging requirements, and that requires upskilling through training or review process, educating, sensitization, and becoming transparent to see to it that we are successful in the social sustainability process and the implementation. So that is what I just wanted to say. Maybe I've taken 10 more minutes as given by Dhananjay, because wanted to go slow and give you an idea. So I do these sort of trainings, activities, and other things. So this is my contact, and I'll be happy to assist organizations if there is a requirement. Right? Yes, Dhananjay.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And we got a detailed understanding how it evolved, and which is also very important in understanding it.
Yeah.
So I would request everyone, please, if you have any query, any question regarding whatever we discussed today, please go ahead. You can ask. I had seen just one question that is asked
Yeah.
in the chat. Khushbu is asking, is any company giving appointment letter to contract workers? So Khushbu, if you are there, if you want to elaborate your question, you can. You can just unmute and speak.
Yeah.
I guess that question was
Anyway, see,
related to contract
yeah,
workers, and
correct.
I also had the similar question.
Yeah,
So what about non-formal?
correct.
We have
Let
many
me,
people that are working
yeah,
in
yeah,
non-formal sector. So
very correct.
yeah.
So this is a big challenge if you really see that. Perhaps the contract workers who are engaged through the contract agencies, they are required to be given appointment letter by the contractor to show that they work for them. Okay. So today, this has become a big challenge for getting any sort of benefits like ESI, PF, or other things, because workers move from one organization to other, and there is no proof that he or she worked in XYZ organization earlier. So this is looked at carefully by the Ministry of Labor, and they want to make it mandatory that any worker who is there will have to be given an appointment letter. Okay. But unfortunately, what is happening on the other side, the flip side, is that real happenings I am telling. Suppose he has a appointment letter of a company A. This worker resigns and he creates a murder somewhere. Okay. And when you track back, he becomes an employee of the company A. So immediately police investigation, all other things come. So it has become more of a headache for many of the organizations. So of course they give the appointment letter, ask them to sign, but they don't give them a copy of that. So these are all, I mean, the ground reality, if you see, that is totally different. And a lot of things will have to be done in this area. Of course, if an organization plans to implement a social sustainability system, it is mandated that it is transparent, and there is a terms of engagement is absolutely clear, which can be evidenced through appointment letter. So that is the status.
Okay. So sir, two to monitor this, actually to measure, is there any format or is there any process in reporting, social sustainability reporting, where
Yeah.
the number of contractual workers is captured? So is
Mm.
it same across all the sustainability reports, or
Yeah.
is it not? So that is the question.
Correct. Now, if you see that, for example, BRSR, it gives this thing of who are all the permanent workers, who are all the contract workers, like that, the division, other things are being given. So every framework has that. For example, if it's a food industry, which is making, say, mango pulp,
Mhm.
and it won't have workers throughout the year. It's only during the season that the workers are engaged and they pluck the mangoes and then pulp is made and the job is done, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
there are so many types of industries. So what is important there is to see to it that the terms of engagement and other requirements are being taken care of. So there
Right.
cannot be a sort of an exception because we are this type of industry, so we won't give this and whatnots. We are talking about the labor rights or the human rights. So all these things will have to be considered by the
Right.
organization.
Right. 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 Yes. We have one more question from Vinith, who
Yeah,
is asking, how can we prepare gender basic policy under MLFA? So,
yeah.
Vinith, if you want to ask any particular point from that, you can elaborate your question if you want.
Yeah, hello sir. Good evening. Myself is
Good
Vineet.
evening. Yeah, yes, sir.
Actually, I am working with some of the multilateral funding agencies
Mm-hmm.
funded projects. This is the
Okay,
MLFA,
right,
like AIB,
right.
ADB, World Bank, and
Correct,
KWF, like that.
correct.
So, as per the funding agency requirements, all the agency needs to prepare a gender basic policy. Okay.
Mm, mm,
We heard about the sustainability policy. We heard about the EHS policy, quality
yeah.
policy. Okay, but how can we prepare the gender basic policy under Indian circumstances and Indian laws?
Mm.
Is there any means guideline? Because this is the mandatory documents before approval of these policies, they can issue the fund for
Correct.
the means
Understand.
progress.
Yeah, that is what, see, the present day, what we talk about is DEIB, or okay, diversity, inclusion, equity, and belongingness. So this is a buzzword if you see that. What they want to say essentially in this is that there is no gender discrimination at any level in the organization. Okay, be it recruitment, be it in the wages. For example, if you really see the legal part of it, men in some for equal job, what is being done, men may get more than the women workers. Okay, it's a
Yes.
universal problem which is there. So what they want is a policy which will take into consideration these anomalies or abnormalities, what we see, and come up with a policy which clearly talks about that the gender, whatever, when we talk about gender, I'm just giving it as women. It could also be because you are dealing with international project. Nowadays, they talk about LGBTQ plus and other categories of people. So
Yeah.
should transgenders and others who get employed. So what they want is a general, like you have a human rights policy. This addresses specifically on these areas, the recruitment part of it, their job profile, that they have the right to work in any sort of any level. It cannot be that because someone is a transgender, the person is given a low level job and they cannot rise in the organization. That is blatant discrimination. So such a sort of practices will not be there. And they are given equal importance, upskilling or anything of that. All these things, what they want is to be detailed out as a part of the gender policy.
Is there any mandatory requirement to hire the local person in the project they are funded by the means multilateral bank in India?
If you see that, it is depending on the local regulations, right? Like if you go to a state like Assam, okay, there will be
Yeah.
a rule somewhere that 10% or 20% will have to be from the local people because of the employment part of it. Like if you go to some mining operations in Chhattisgarh, they will
Hmm.
insist that the locals will have to be employed because they are all Adivasis who don't have employment, right? But if you
Hmm.
go to Maharashtra or anywhere, such a thing may not be there. Okay, it is local and also regional, depending on the regulations part of it. So we have to look at it in that perspective.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. So related to this,
Yeah.
there is one question asked by
Hmm.
Komaldeep.
Yeah.
Can you please explain if there is any particular size of company that are required to take into account inclusion and diversity goals in the organization?
Hmm.
So is it any legally mandate on the companies? So this is the number of people that you work, and then it is mandatory for them.
No, there is nothing like that. There could be, if you look at, for example, a textile industry in India, if you come to the southern part of India, like you go to Tirupur or some other places, only the managing director will be the male. All the workers will be female workers. Majority of them are female workers.
Right.
You go to the northern part of India, the same textile industry, you won't find any women workers at all there.
Mhm.
Hardly. The percentage is less. So it depends on the local culture and all other aspects which are there. There is no mandate to say if you are 100 people company, you should put 10% of the workforce as women or other categories of people. Nothing like that. The push is coming to see to it that they have been rather not given their rights in the past, so they must be encouraged to be a part and parcel of the progress. So all these beti bachao, beti padao, and give them the job or upskilling, skill India, all these programs of the government or even by the respective industries, if you see, is all because of the inclusion part of it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
And I
it
guess
is
with
there, not
ESG
much of a
reporting
regulation. Yeah.
and sustainability reporting that we have, so the
Hmm.
measurement and the accountability will
Correct.
uh,
Correct.
be assigned for the companies to
Yeah,
work
you
on
are
it.
asking about the measurement part of it, right?
Right.
So I didn't answer it earlier. Let me answer it. If you see that most of these social issues which are there, they are subjective. So
Mhm.
we cannot say what is your discrimination level or anything. We cannot say that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whether the system is effective or not, the processes are in place and the mechanisms exist in the organization, it's difficult to measure. But however, certain indicators and other things have been brought out. For example, if you see, I can talk about the social accountability 8,000 standard. They have something called as a social fingerprint. Okay. So the social fingerprint is a tool whereby, so any organization, if it wants to measure its social performance, can pay fees and access the tool, and you are rated in a range of 1 to 5,
Okay.
right? So if you are in the range of 4, that means the systems are effective. If you are in the 3 or 2, meaning that there will have to be a lot of work which has to be done. So in a way, the maturity level of the system gets evaluated through these mechanisms. It's more like some of you may be familiar with this EcoVadis and other schemes where you have a scoring mechanism which is there, or other people rate it as, gold, platinum, silver, and whatnot. So somewhere these mechanisms do exist, and it is for each of the things. But when we look at the sustainability framework, what is expected is that they don't look at whether you have gone from 85 to 87% or something. It is broadly looking at how the issues get addressed and what sort of continual improvements have been done by the organization. So mechanisms vary, but the focus is on continual improvement.
Okay, right, yes. The next two questions, these are somewhat technical questions. I will just ask both at the same time. First is regarding ILO compliance requirement. Some more information on ILO compliance requirement, and second is the ratification process. So what is the ratification process?
Correct. One is, see, ILO, when we look at the ILO compliance, if we see that, there is nothing as ILO compliance. Okay. ILO comes up with these conventions and recommendations. These are international laws. And based on that, every country comes up with its own local legislations, maybe the country legislations or regional legislations, whatever it is. It can be for the state of, say, Maharashtra, or it can be for the whole of India, whatever be the regulations which are there. Like Minimum Wage Act, if you see, it's applicable across India. Now, this minimum are hours of work. If we see that 8 hours of work and beyond that becomes overtime. So there is an ILO convention on the hours of work. So that has been, the essence of it has been taken into consideration and adapted to meet the local conditions. So by meeting the local conditions, we meet the ILO regulations, right? But there could be instances where certain industries or certain countries, the legislations, local legislations may be weak. In other words, there may not be any law for certain type of work or something. Like if you see a fish processing industry, what should be the safety require or other things, it may not be clear in the local legislation. So that does not mean an organization looks at the local legislation and says, I follow the local law, but it doesn't meet the human rights requirements. So under those conditions, they are required to refer to the ILO regulations or the ILO conventions and recommendations and see to it that those requirements are also being adopted by them to demonstrate the human rights. The rights are protected in the organization. So it varies from it purely depends on the regulatory framework which is prevailing in each of the countries. Okay. So we have to look at it that way. So there is nothing as a ILO compliance as such. If you obey the local law, obviously you are meeting the ILO requirements. Okay. But if your law is not there, then please look at the ILO requirement. Don't say that, no, there is no law and you bypass things. Not acceptable. Look at the international regulations and try to follow those requirements. Right? So that is the question number one. What is the second one?
Ratification process.
Ratification process. Ratification process is that it is nothing but signing or accepting that regulation through the signing of that ILO regulation or a recommendation which gets published by ILO. So this ratification process, as we see that there is a structured way. There are representatives of union, the business, and the workers together from each of the countries. They go to the ILO. So it is a three-member tripart. ILO is, as you know, is a tripartite organization from the business, the workers, and the trade union people. So these all the three people, but the voting is only one for each of the country. So they vote in the forum, and based on that, the regulations are made or revisions are made. And whether a country must accept it or not, it is left to the country. So the acceptance process is what we call as the ratification. And when we say, we cannot say that I find this regulation, ILO regulation is 10 pages. First page number 1 to 5 is good. I will meet that. I will ratify that. But I will forget the rest of the 5, not acceptable. When we say ratification, in a wholesome manner, we accept the regulation in totality and come up with the local regulation. It is not mandated, but however, it is recommended that it is to see that the commitment of the respective governments to come up with the protection of the human rights is taken care of, right? Like, for example, India has not ratified the Child Labor Convention. That is why we have our law which says one who is 14 years and below is considered as a child. Whereas if we look at the ILO convention, it will say 15 years and above are considered as 15 years and below are considered as children. But recommendation, ILO recommendation says 16 years. So many countries like China or Sri Lanka or even other Southeast Asian countries, they have the law which says that anyone below 16 years is a child. So these sort of things do happen. It's basically that the ratification is something which is to be looked at by the state, and a lot of other factors come in. It's not that you just go there and sit on the table and sign it and come. A lot of social factors, political issues, and various other things have to be taken into consideration in the process of ratification. Right? So that is, in simple, that's the jargon for acceptance of that regulation. That process is called as ratification process.
Yeah, got it. Got it. Yeah, so this is a final request for everyone. If you have any question, you can just unmute and ask. It was a great session in a way, sir. I got a bird's eye view, we can say, so about all entire social sustainability,
True.
how it evolved, what are the different ways it is
It's
done, and especially I like the way you indicated GRI, BRSR, SA 8000, so everything into one slide. So that really gave us more understanding on how each of these are connected.
Yeah. So
yes, so it's
a big topic altogether.
Yes.
Maybe we will find another occasion to talk specifics if you are interested, and it will be my pleasure to again discuss things. Thank you all, and thank you, Dhananjay, for giving me the opportunity, and I hope people could enjoy the session, okay, and they benefited from this.
Yes, it was a great learning session, sir, for all of us. Thank you so much, and thank you all who joined this session. So I'm also putting link in the chat if you want to register this into this initiative. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.